everybody, how's it going? This is Edan of Light Cycle Astrology. Today we are taking a look at the upcoming adherence that the Sun is making to the planet Pluto at the end degrees of Capricorn. Now this is moving into engagement range by Sunday, but I thought we'd hit it today on Friday because I don't come back until Monday making content. For sure, I think we're already beginning to feel it Friday, maybe even as early as yesterday for some of us, and then Saturday, I think it picks up a little bit more. Sunday, it's already in the engagement range, that 3-degree range of orb for traditional astrology aspects. And actually, one thing that we should note is that I'm actually mistaken to call it an aspect because in traditional astrology, the ancient astrologers did not think of conjunctions as aspects. They considered them to be adherences, which is kind of gives you the sense that it's like two planets being almost like nuclearly fused together. You know, it's a blending of the energies where when we talk about aspects, they're usually referring to the sextiles, trines, squares, and oppositions. But for some reason, this was a little bit more of a special, we'll call it a transit. So let's go ahead and pull up the real-time clock and get a look at this bad boy here. So you can see there we have Pluto and the Sun getting pretty close at right around 25 to 28 degrees of Capricorn. And as we go forward in time here, what happens is by about Wednesday, the Sun overtakes Pluto and then begins to separate from Pluto, but not before it ingresses into Aquarius. Very interesting. And you can see here comes the moon. By around the new moon, the day of January the 21st, the following Saturday is really when this aspect is separated out, especially the Sun and the moon have ingressed across the sign boundary, leaving Pluto alone in Capricorn. But one thing that is really powerful and potent about this transit is that when it begins to move into that 3-degree range of influence, we are getting the we are getting the last quarter moon come through right about the time that the engagement range is crossed. So there is almost like a doubling of signification here. We're getting the last quarter moon, which is on its way to the dark balsamic moon, and then it dies out to become a new moon. And this is all happening at the last degrees of a very powerful sign, Capricorn. And typically these last degrees of any sign really, they can pack quite a punch. They can be very powerful degrees of any sign. So we're seeing the Sun, which is a powerful planet, make a very powerful transit or energy contact to Pluto, another powerful planet. It's all happening in a powerful sign in powerful degrees. And we're seeing that last quarter moon come through, which can sometimes be about letting go and walking away. So we get a little bit of a sense about what this is. We're talking about things that have to do with power, obviously, and then we're also having this last quarter lunation speak to something that is looking ahead toward the future, maybe rebelling against something in the now, and maybe letting go of anything that is needed to be let go of that happened a couple weeks back. So there we have the beginnings of what is shaping up to be maybe a pretty potent, intense, and powerful moment. All right, so now one thing that is interesting is that along with this whole adherence thing, there is another distinction that whenever the Sun overtakes a planet, we would normally look for the planet to lose visibility under the beams of the Sun's rays. And then as it gets closer to the Sun, it even has another distinction called combustion. But because Pluto is invisible to the naked eye, that planet, as the Sun nears it, never ever goes from being visible in the sky to invisible. Pluto is always invisible. So one thing that's interesting about this conjunction is right off the bat, we don't look for the planet to lose visibility, which generally signifies a weakening of the planet. So makes me wonder if, because we're dealing with a modern discovered planet like Pluto, we don't see a weakening quite so much as we would with the other visible planets. There's a little bit of a different signification with this. Now, I'm just kind of speculating on this. Nobody really knows. But Pluto always signifies invisibility. That's one thing that's different. So Hence, the concept of falling under the beams or being within the combustion rays of the sun do not apply to him. However, we still use that 3-degree range of influence we normally use in ancient astrology, predicting the most intense timing of the transit to occur within 3 degrees on either side of the conjunction. And that's happening Sunday, January 15th. It perfects Wednesday, January 18th, and it takes about 6 to 7 days altogether for the whole transit to go through. I think we're already feeling it, though. I think we're already seeing it in the news as well. Okay, so I have 5 things to watch for, given the fact that the last quarter moon is simultaneously coming through, especially through the sign of Scorpio. The first theme that I would look for are something involving Machiavellian situations, Machiavellian urges, or Machiavellian people. There's kind of a sense of raw power that becomes obsessively focused and goal-oriented. So this could be a situation, but it doesn't have to even be about a bad outcome. It could just be that there's kind of an intensity to even regular things. Like, let's say over the weekend, you're trying to gather the family up to go do something. This could be where dad is really just hard-nosed, super focused, obsessed about every little detail. Everything has to happen right. And it's just kind of intense. And there's a sense of like just this raw power kind of being more intense. And it is very focused, and it's all about the goal. The goal doesn't necessarily have to be something monumental at all. It can be just something as much as like, the sandwiches don't get packed in the cooler like this. They get packed like that. And this is the way you do it. And we were 3 seconds late from getting in the car. There, you know, I'm starting to already feel that around people. I've noticed around me and within myself already. So I'm wondering if that intensifies. But that's theme number 1: Machiavellian situations, urges, or people, a sense of raw power that becomes obsessively focused or goal-oriented. Okay, theme 2 to watch for is secrets being brought into the light. That's pretty standard, pretty typical. It's a very common delineation for the sun making an adherence to Pluto. You know, Pluto representing things that are invisible, things that are in the unconscious or below the radar somehow, and the sun representing the light that exposes it. So I think you really do see this. It's interesting, just within the news, you see that this whole thing about secret documents by presidents, Trump and Biden now, has really been coming into the light. So I think you're already seeing that. But one interesting facet I think about this is for me, I imagine that the sun is a symbol of the divine. It's said to have its joy in the 9th house in the ancient astrology house system, having its joy in the 9th, having some kind of divinatory knowledge from on high that just is. You know, you don't know sometimes how you know something, you just know it. So I get the sense that sometimes it's like there may be discoveries of things that are hidden that isn't necessarily because of some regular act. It's almost as if they're like the hand of God comes down and just presents it to you. It may be because we're a bit more intensely focused and detail oriented with the sun making that conjunction to Pluto right now, but there is a sense of divinity almost in it where it's just there, you know? Okay, so theme number 3 is solar figures and corruption. A little bit like theme number 2, but just more of a concrete Hellenistic kind of delineation for this transit would be that the sun is representing people in authority, people in power, presidents, leaders, bosses, those kinds of things, and their struggle with corruption. The moral, you know, it's almost like morality becomes a questionable thing on some level, or at least there's like some kind of experimentation with morality. So corruption, not in the sense that they're maybe even doing anything wrong, but more in the sense of like there is that impetus to really drive something towards a goal or focus, and at any cost. You know, Pluto is a planet that was related to the discovery of atomic energy, and it was discovered right around the time where we began using atomic energy to create atomic bombs that could win us wars. It's very powerful, deep, raw, cosmic kind of forces that are represented by Pluto. So you could see that maybe the outcome isn't corrupt in a moralistic way, but there's like an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other, and maybe you're wrestling, or leaders are wrestling right now with what to do, what's right. And maybe that feeling of raw power coming through them, and that super determined focus to get the goal met is somehow corrupting or corroding, the ambition right now. So something along those lines, the solar figures and corruption coming together. Okay, theme number 4 is captivated by light and dark in all manner of interest. So we take light as a baseline symbol, and we take dark as a baseline symbol. This is happening in Capricorn, a sign that is the season where we get the darkest night of the year. As Capricorn kicks off, the sun is at its lowest declination. The arc of the sun throughout the day is at its lowest southern, declination in the sky. And from there, now along the path of the Earth in its orbit, angles the tilt of the Earth in such a way that begins to slowly raise the arc of the sun each day. And that's where we begin to get longer and longer days and shorter nights. But this is happening in a sign where we have, the darkest time of the year, and it's just now beginning for that sun to rise. So there is a very interesting combination of the planetary archetypal energies are very much in line with the zodiacal energies, with that whole light and dark kind of concept. So one example of this could be like, let's say you're at your daughter's soccer game or something, and you find yourself telling her to like trip the forward because she can make a goal. And again, sort of these questions around power and goals and determinism, and this real almost corruptible energy that makes us feel like, well, is it better to win, or is it better to, what is the right thing to do in this situation? A little bit like playing with that light and dark. Or maybe in art, if you're doing some artistic thing, maybe there's just a little bit more of a dark thing that you're creating that has a bit of light exposing it. Maybe some art about I don't know, the abuse of animals or children or something right now, and that becomes something that you thematically embody and something that you're artistically creating. Or anything like that. Could be just going to see like a very dark movie that is like, what do they call it, black humor, or like a black comedy, something like that. This whole concept of how do we see light and dark represent the division between good and bad, moral and immoral, like all sorts of dualistic terms that could be represented by those qualities. Light can sometimes represent the future, and dark can sometimes represent the past. So you get it a lot, especially in the sign of Capricorn that is Saturn ruled. So there could be some thematic thing around some intense investigation or interest into the past versus the future, things like that. Okay, so theme number 5, my last theme here, we have death, either metaphorical or actual. Usually it's not going to be actual. I don't want to scare anybody, but it, people, there are times where people meet their end with transits like this, but most of the time we're just talking about metaphorical kinds of death here, but either death, metaphorical or actual, and the carrying out of final or loose ends for those things. Now, this is really because we see the last quarter moon coming through, and those usually signify a time where we are letting go of something we've just been working on, or something that maybe has reached some kind of culminative effort that we're preparing for a new cycle to begin as the new moon comes through. And we have to go through that dark period. So as the transit sweeps by, as the sun sweeps by Pluto, engages it outside of range, moves into range, actually transits past it, and then begins to separate out of range. That whole period takes about a week, and that's the last, week or so of the lunation cycle. So there's a very matched theme with maybe letting something go, coming to terms with something, tying up loose ends, saying goodbye to somebody, saying goodbye to a situation, perhaps even mourning something, having to tie up some loose ends. That's a real big theme with the light and dark representing maybe like a death and rebirth kind of theme. So that is what I think this transit represents. If you guys have your own themes, I'd love to hear them. It's always really good to see how these work out within people's lives. I'm just coming up with a few. There are probably hundreds of things that you could delineate from, any one transit or aspect. Please tell me if you got any good ideas. I'd love to hear them. But thanks so much, everybody, for watching. And I hope you have a really good weekend. Be safe and love each other. And I'll be back on Monday. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.